Welcome back to another Tune In Trojans broadcast. Today we're going to be talking with the cross country team. We're going to be talking with the volleyball team, and we have a special guest joining us today to give us a little bit of information about what esports has been up to at Dakota State University. We're going to kick off this broadcast with our interview with the cross country team. So let's hear from Coach Drealan. Hey, Trojan fans, I am joined by head cross country track coach Anthony Drealan. The cross country team had a very busy weekend this past weekend. They had their one and only home cross country meet where the men took first place overall for the third consecutive year in a row, while the women placed second overall, placing three women in the top 10 for that meet. Coach, I'm sure you're excited. What were some things that went well for both the men and women's teams this past weekend?
Well, as you mentioned, placing wise was really happy with that, and we knew that that was where we could be, had the capability to be. So, of course, what doesn't always line up with what you do. You still have to do it. So that was great, obviously. But most importantly, and as you know, our course is really challenging and hilly, and it's a vastly different course than the previous meet we had at the Augustana Twilight. So going into the meet, a couple things that we wanted to focus on was to be a bit more conservative early on in the race and really try to work hard in the last 40% of the race or so, where you have a lot of hills, you're tired, it's challenging, there's not as many fans way out on the west side of the golf course, and just really try to close hard, because we'll have meets coming up where it's going to be very easy to go out aggressively and fast through the first mile. And so this was a meet where we really wanted to try to focus on packing up and doing that. And so I think we did that pretty well. We gained some strength mentally with a course like that, which is huge in cross country. You have to learn how to be comfortable while being uncomfortable, and pushing yourself when you're in that kind of fatigue and pain and that sort of thing. So those are all things that we tried to do, and I think we accomplished pretty well. And real briefly, but looking at our team time, which is the total time of the top 5 runners in each squad, we ran the fastest times on our home course since 2019, and that's a little misleading too, because back in 2019 we had to have this meet down at Dort because that's when Madison flooded, and that year we had a great year. Our women won a conference title, as did our men. And so, but my point is that we've put ourselves in a really good spot early in the season to progress a lot, and are looking fairly strong. So excited about all those things.
For sure, and I'm glad you kind of touched on overall time, because we're trying to go back to some basics for each sport and have the coaches kind of explain how aspects of their sport work that our audience may not know. So cross country is a little unique in terms of scoring. So I was wondering if you could explain a little bit more in detail how scoring works and who's determined first place, second place, or third place based on score for cross country.
Yeah, absolutely. And like golf, lowest score wins. You want to have the least amount of points in cross country, and that's how you know you're successful. So your overall place coincides with the amount of points that you score for your team. So if you have the number 1, the number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5 runners in the race, you score a perfect score of 15 points. And so while I'm on that note, 5 members of the team are your scoring members of a cross-country team. And the total of those 5 runners add up to your score, and hence who has the lowest score wins. So, for instance, if we have the first place athlete, the 10th place athlete, the 15th place athlete, 20 and 25, those points are added up, to get your total score. So that's the gist of, scoring. There are 5 members of your scoring team. Runners 6 and 7 round out your full team. And runners 6 and 7 can knock other athletes from other teams back a spot. So my number 6 runner isn't part of our score, but what they do is if my 6 runner finishes 30th, that means the person behind them, has 31 points instead of 30. And what's really unique about cross country is you can often have more runners than that compete in the race, but they're taken completely out of the scoring equation. So when you look at cross country results, as you go down the results on the right hand side, often of their names, you'll see their scoring place. But when you get down towards the bottom, there's huge gaps where there's no scoring next to the name. And that's because they're not in that team's top 7. And hence they can't knock anybody else down a place and that sort of thing. So that's really appealing with cross country is you can have a team of 30 athletes compete, but when it comes down to your team score, your top 5 are most important, and your 6 and 7 round out your full team. And when we go to the national championships, that is a meet where you have a limitation and you can only run 7 athletes. But for the whole regular season and even our conference championships, we can run as many athletes as we want. And that is really how you can determine, okay, who's going to be your best 7 at the end of the year.
For sure. That's really interesting. Just the dynamic of that is has way more depth than a person would think.
Yes.
Now your team does have a little bit of a break before your guys' next meet. So what does practice look like for your athletes for this next week and a half when they're preparing for this next meet coming up?
Yeah, so we have a week in here where we don't have to worry about preparing for a race mentally or physically. So the training is ramped up to a certain degree. We're probably running a bit more volume overall within terms of our total running, but we're also this upcoming Saturday going to have a pretty intense race specific workout, which allows us to hopefully further our ability to display our fitness in a race. And so there's some aspects of it that are more challenging, but also athletes have that kind of mental reprieve of getting away from the nerves heading into a race and are able to kind of reset and kind of have a down week there. If you look at running and cross country and track in general, people generally do less competitions than other sports often. Obviously football, you only have limited competitions because of the intense nature of it, but there's other sports you play many games. And cross country and track is like that in that you're really trying to get the most out of their athletic performance a handful of times throughout the season, and so that's why we have these breaks in here. And so anyways, we'll be focused heavily on training. For some athletes who are dealing with minor injuries, this is a great time where we can pull back and make sure we can get that healthy and those things healthy. And also it gives us a sense of really a high level of motivation as we get to September 22nd and race again, because it'll be another 2 weeks from our last race, and people are normally by that point really itching to race again and go and compete. So that's our focuses here this next week, and we're gonna have some great training that's is gonna really hopefully advance our ability to race well.
For sure. And the next meet that you guys have coming up is the Griak Invitational. I believe it's in St. Paul, Minnesota as well. That's a pretty big meet as well. The course can be a little hilly. How are you guys feeling knowing that that's going to be your next meet? What are your opinions on the course? How do you think your athletes are going to handle that?
Well, it's a fun meet, because the University of Minnesota hosts it, and so you get to watch some D1 athletes race, and the races in the morning, and so there's a lot of excitement of doing that. Plus, it's an overnight trip, which is always just different, and a lot of fun. So there's a lot of excitement for that. The athletes who've run it before, and even the new coming athletes know that it's going to be a challenging course. So that's going to be something that we prepare for and get ready for. It is different in some ways from our home course in that it's a lot of ups and downs, not long hills, but often short and steep. So that's a little bit different than our home course. But really, the biggest challenge is that it's a very competitive meet, and it'll be one where there's 350 people per race. So you're going to have a lot of people around you, and so you can't get lost in the shuffle and aren't really racing. Sometimes you get in the pack like that and just kind of run along. And so that's something that hopefully we can do better upon and everything too. But it's one that despite the challenging nature of the course, athletes love because it's a fun experience and a great meet to go to. So there's excitement, especially as we get into next week and are getting closer to it.
For sure. Well, thanks so much again, Coach, for coming in and giving us an update and a little bit of a cross country lesson as well. Definitely is appreciated. And we are going to all be wishing you guys the best of luck at Roy Griak.
Thank you much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Have a good one. Hey, Trojan fans. I am joined by head volleyball coach Amy Veenhof. The Trojans were busy this past weekend in Wisconsin at the Viterbo tournament, where the volleyball team is now 7-7 overall score for their preseason matchup. However, the Trojans are coming home for a string of home matches, which is really exciting, kicking off on September 14th against Bellevue University. Coach, I am sure you're so excited to be back here at home finally. What are some definite things your team and the coaching staff are going to benefit from playing at home for these next few matches?
Yeah, just not having to get on the bus and travel somewhere will be really nice. I think the girls are looking forward to that because they're getting sick of the bus as well, just like the coaches are. So that'll be great just to be at home and not have to do that. And then just they're comfortable playing in our gym, obviously, because this is where we practice every day. So they're most comfortable playing and competing in our gym. So that'll be nice. And then just having, to get more support. I mean, we've had some fans at all of our tournaments and all of the matches that we've had so far, but I mean, it's different. It's a few parents that are able to usually make the trip. Here at home, lots of people can come, students can come, members from the community. It won't just be, family members or parents that are able to come and pack the gym. So that'll be nice too, just having a bigger crowd to play in front of for the players. So looking forward to a lot of things. Just like it's just so nice to be at home and get started with some matches in front of a big crowd for the girls.
For sure, for sure. And now we're also taking a week to kind of go back to the basics for sports. We have a pretty big audience and we want to make sure people are understanding what terminology and stuff is for every sport. And volleyball has a lot of depth to it. One of them being the libero. And so I was hoping you could explain a little bit more about their role on the court and in a match because I was doing a little reading on it and it seems like it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I'm kind of laughing, a little bit because I am uh, uh, volleyball. Not many people know volleyball, and so it is kind of nice, but yet it's I don't know. As a coach, it's kind of nice because it's like you really don't have any idea what you're talking about. Some of the people, if they get upset about something or another, it's like you don't even know, so you can't even get upset. But with the libero position in particular, I can't even remember what year that that volleyball introduced the libero position. It's been quite a while though now, and basically, it's a player that can stay in and play pretty much the entire time in the back row only. So in volleyball, you rotate around. You don't just get to kind of go in and play wherever. There's three rotations where a player is in the front row, and then three rotations where a player is in the back row. And you rotate around and you go in a specific order, so it is a lot different than most other sports in that aspect. But the libero position, they only play in the back row. The player does. They wear a different colored jersey so that you can track them going in and out of the match to make sure that they are going in and out for the people that they have not subbed for, but have gone in and out for before, because that is important. You can't just go in and out for every different person. If that makes sense, I'm probably not explaining it very clearly, but yeah, they primarily, like I said, play in the back row. If they do step in and play a ball in front of the attack line, the 10-foot line where our front row players are able to attack from, they have to forearm pass the ball. They cannot play the ball overhead, or else it would be called for a back row attack because they are not allowed to attack. They have to stay behind the attack line that in the back row. There's just some different rules with them. They don't count, like I said, as a substitution. They can go in and out. And so like in NCAA, they keep track of substitutions and you're only allowed 15. In the NAI, we have an unlimited number of subs. But like I said, the libero position, you don't count them as a sub when they go in and out. So that gives you some flexibility to kind of run them in and out for whoever or more than one person. But yeah, it's just, people that don't understand it, just I would say to just try to focus on that one player and maybe you'll catch on to what they're doing or who they're going in and out for. Um, but yeah, it's really improved the game, I think, allowing that one person to really to stay back there and be your be your leader on defense and on serve receive and only playing in the back row. It's allowed there to be much more specialization in the sport of volleyball, whereas, previously everybody kind of rotated around and played everywhere. And now you have more specific, okay, they're the middle hitter and they're only going to play in the front row, or they're the right side hitter and they're only going to play in the right front. The libero position, they stay in the back row and they get to, foot. I kind of tease our girls. I call them the smalls and the talls. And during practices, it's our smalls are our back row only players that aren't in the front row getting up and hitting the ball. They're in the back row and they have a job, and it's just as important as our front row players, obviously, too, to that do get up and get the kills. But that kind of is what the libero does, is back row player only. And like I said, it's really, I think, improved the game. So it's fun.
For sure. And liberos wear a different colored jersey most of the time, right?
Yes, they have to have it, not most of the time, all of the time, your libero
All the
will
time.
have, yes, will have a different colored jersey on. They are not allowed to libero if they don't have the contrasting color jersey on. Yes,
Okay.
that would just really make things confusing, Maddie.
Yes. I had to make sure. Like I said, I was doing some reading about it, and because I was just genuinely curious, and I was like, dang, I bet there's not a lot of people that know about this. For sure. But thank you for kind of giving us a quick lesson on that. Kind of going back to the team coming home for a while, I think it's kind of known at DSU, the volleyball team is pretty well known for having a lot of really fun home themes for their volleyball events. So, are there any notable ones that our audience should be writing down on the calendar right now to be ready for these next coming up home matches that we have?
Yeah. Actually, tomorrow for our home opener, we're doing something new that we haven't done before. It's Meet the Trojans, and it's for all kids in grades kindergarten through fifth grade. So it's more geared towards elementary age students. But it's just we're doing that after school from like 3:30 to 5. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna have kids show up, and any kid can show up. They don't have to like pre-register or anything. Just show up to the field house, and it's their opportunity to kind of introduce the players to them. We're going to have a couple different activities that the players do with the kids that are there, and then have pizza for all the kids that are there. And then they get a ticket for the home match tomorrow against Bellevue. So hopefully they'll stick around and cheer us on. And so that's what we have tomorrow going on. Pretty excited. I think the girls are, and just to get our community and our youth more involved. And then on September 26th, we have our faculty staff appreciation. We do an ice cream social with all of our faculty and staff after that match. And that's just our way to, again, kind of engage with DSU community and get more faculty and staff at our matches, and show that we appreciate them and all the support that they do give us. And then October 12th, we have our Dig Pink match, which is our breast cancer awareness match. A lot of volleyball teams and football teams do that in the fall during a game, just to promote breast cancer awareness. So we have that October 12th. And then the last weekend, or the first weekend in November, November 4th and 5th, it's our last weekend of regular play. We are having our alumni weekend. And so all volleyball alumni will be invited back for that. And we'll hopefully have some volleyball matches, alumni going on Saturday morning before we play our last match with Waldorf. So we have that as well. And then other themes that happen, throughout the course are more set up from our student athletes. And I believe, I don't know if it's a blackout or a blue out or something supposed to be happening, I think, too, with one of these matches, either tomorrow or Thursday. So there is always kind of those other things or themes that they get going to, which makes it a lot of fun and a good environment for the girls to play in.
For sure. Well, it definitely makes it a lot of fun. So everybody be getting to some of these home volleyball matches that we have coming up to support our volleyball team. Coach, thanks so much again for coming in today, giving us a little bit of a lesson and giving us a pretty good update. We're excited to see you guys back at home tomorrow. So we're wishing you all the best of luck.
Thanks so much, Maddie.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Hey, Trojan fans, I am joined with student broadcast manager Landon Hand from the esports team. Trojans Esports has had a pretty busy weekend this past weekend, opening up their CCL season in Valorant and Rocket League. Valorant faced off against the University of South Dakota, winning that match 2-1, where Rocket League faced off against the University of North Dakota, and they pushed the series to the fifth game, ultimately coming up short with a 3-2 score. Landon, you play a pretty important role as the broadcast manager for the esports team. Would you mind kind of telling me what your duties are in that position?
Yeah. So I was voted in this last year by the Esports Club and for broadcast and events chair, broadcast manager, however you want to call it. Doesn't really matter. Either way, I have been kind of organizing the teams throughout this previous month and trying to figure out a stream schedule for them, trying to get them onto stream and just trying to figure out all the small details. My position this semester is new. And so it's kind of a toss-up. We're still figuring out some things for that. But for the most part, I've been helping run streams. I've been organizing streams, scheduling them, and all that kind of fun stuff.
And speaking of scheduling and running streams, the esports team has stayed very busy over the summer, streaming consistently as well, leading into the beginning of this school year. And just yesterday, within 24 hours, you guys hosted a streaming event as well. So, what was your role in that, and what was kind of going on for that event on Twitch?
So yeah, yesterday we hosted a National Video Game Day stream. It went about 6.5 hours long with, it would have been 7 different guests playing a variety of different games. We had games from Rocket League, as you were saying earlier, to Elden Ring, to Madden. We had Assetto Corsa playing yesterday. And so yeah, there was a variety of different games that were playing. The planning process for that was, for the most part, fairly simple. I had to schedule in some times, figure out what time would work best for everybody. I had a total of 6 people fill out that a form that I put out during one of the esports meetings, and 5 of those guys were able to make it. And then we had Coach Kibbe and Coach Randall from the football team also participate in that stream, playing a little bit of Madden. But for the most part, it was just kind of getting time slots all scheduled in so that they would have enough time to kind of introduce themselves and play a little bit of the game. Maybe one of these times I'm gonna have to make a bigger stream and allow people to have a bit more time in order to play some of the games that they enjoy.
For sure, for sure. Well, it's definitely a new and fun thing that's going on DSU's campus. And just to continue this conversation further, because the esports team is doing so much right now. You guys have really just taken off. The esports team over the summer also started a talk show as well on Twitch, which I'm pretty sure we had a previous host for that, but now the torch has kind of been passed on to you, which is very exciting. So, what are some of your goals for this talk show for this year?
So to start off, I would like to thank the previous host, Thomas, for doing that and passing it on to me. I'd like to thank him greatly for kind of having the setup all done, so there wasn't too much for that. But some of the goals that I have for that talk show, to start off, once the CCL season starts kicking in and more teams start getting into their leagues and getting into their matches, the plan is to kind of go over the week and what is going to be played over the next week, as well as what happened the previous week and what were the scores for that. As well as some little random bits and pieces. I've been playing Quirtle on that. I'm not doing too well on that. You might have seen a clip of that. Words are not my forte per se. So there's some little bits and pieces that go on with that. I kind of ramble on, just trying to get in some time. But yeah, starting later off starting later on, we're going to get some more of the athletics side of things in there and make sure that each team is represented equally to make sure that they can be heard and so that they can get noticed. And that's kind of the goal for that.
For sure, for sure. That's really exciting. Yeah, the esports team has really just taken off. It's really exciting to see what you guys have already done in just the few months we've been back here at the university. Trojans are not slowing down anytime soon with their CCL matches. We have another great set of matchups coming up this weekend on Sunday. Valorant and Rocket League are going to be playing against the University of Minnesota Moorhead in a double matchup starting at 7 p.m. Whereas League of Legends is going to have 2 matches as well. They're going to be going up on Saturday against UNL, and then on Monday they're going to be going up against SDSU, both starting at 8 p.m. Everything will be streamed to the Trojans Twitch as well. Landon, thank you so much for coming in today, giving us a little insight on what's going on and what your position entails. I'm sure we're going to see more of you throughout the year for sure.
For sure. And thank you.
Thank you, Trojan fans, for tuning in to another Tune In with the Trojans broadcast. If you guys want to stay updated on all of the upcoming events, games, and matches, check us out at www.dsuathletics.com to stay updated on all of the events that will be coming up within the next few weeks. And until next time, go Trojans.